In this video, we're going to start talking about V corrections and how to apply those from within LinkTools. So if we start off here, let's go to ECMLink and look at this log. So standard log, a pull that started somewhere around 2400 RPMs, and I took it up to about 7000 RPMs. Now, as you can see here, I've got a reference point set in ECMLink that shows me a 0 reference point. And this trace up here is wideband factor, which is my wideband error. The light green trace is my AFR, the dark green trace is the target I should be hitting, and then the wideband factor up here is showing me the amount of error I have. Now, normally, traditionally, the way people would correct for this error is to pick a point, say right here where it spiked a little bit and went lean. If I look at my wideband factor value down here, I can see I'm 5% lean right there. So to correct that in the VE table, I would go to the VE table, hit track data log. It's showing me 2 cells here, and I would figure out what a 5%, manually figure out what a 5% change to these would be, and increase those by 5%. To get out the calculator, plug the new numbers in. There's a couple of problems with that. One is that no one likes to get out a calculator and do this on every single point in the log. And the second problem is that's not really how the correction should be applied, because as we talked about a little bit earlier, the actual VE for this area is coming from 4 cells. If I look at this log, my VE point right here is at 0.83. And my RPM point is 3,000, almost 3,000 RPM, but not quite, and my map point is 5.2. So in the VE table, I'm not quite to this 3,000 point, so the majority of my VE is probably coming from somewhere over in this area, and at some interpolated point between the map and the RPM. Now the problem is you don't know how much of that VE is coming from which cell. That's where LinkTools comes into play, because it gives you very accurate contributions for each of these 4 cells. So anyway, let's go to LinkTools and see what we can do with that. We go to our log chart, import that log. We're going to see the same data we're seeing in ECMLink here. Here's our wideband reference point across here, and then the error itself is shown there. This is the point we were looking at in ECMLink. Now remember, in ECMLink when we looked at this, we're tracking the data log here. We're at that point, and we said somewhere in this area is where the V is coming from, but we don't know exactly where, so we don't know how to apply that correction once we do figure it out. If you look at LinkTools, it's telling us exactly what the percentages are, and you can tell up here that the majority of the error in that VE is coming from this cell right here. So let's go to ECMLink, get our VE table, and bring that into LinkTools. And now we'll be able to tell exactly where this how these 4 group percentages break down. So if I look at the VE table, you can see that right there in the 3000 cell and the 5.5 map cell is where the majority of that error is concentrated. So we know that 83% of the error correction to fix this problem needs to fall in that cell, and then the other cells will pick up the remaining small amount. So the trick is figuring out how to apply 83% of a 5% error to this cell and then spread it out to the other cells. Fortunately, LinkTools does that for you. One way you can do this, if you just want to do this one area, the simplest way to do it is if you right click, you can clear any previous corrections, which we don't have any in there, but you can clear those. You can apply V corrections at cursor, which means it's going to correct the error at this 4 group cell and only where the cursor is. You can also apply V corrections to all marked cells, and we'll get to that in just a second. So for now, let's go ahead and correct this one area. I just hit apply V corrections to cursor, and what it's going to do is go make corrections to these 4 groups based on the percentages that these 4 cells share. So now if I go look at my VE table and go up here and look at correction factors, you can see how it's applied a correction to the 4 cells that are being affected. And one thing to notice here is that the 3005.5 cell has a large correction. It's actually being corrected considerably more than the other three, which makes perfect sense when you think about the fact that the error at that point, 83% of it is concentrated in that cell. So LinkTools actually took that into consideration when it figured out how much correction to apply to those cells. So now that we know what the correction factors are for the cells, if we go back to the VE table, hit apply corrections, and it will correct those cells by those percentages. So you can see here that it made a fairly large percentage change to this cell, and not so much to those. They all raised, but this one took the majority of it, and it's still somewhat in line with the surrounding cells, so it seems to make sense. If we restore the save values, oops, I didn't have it stored. Let's go back here and grab it again, and this time we'll store it. Just paste it back in there and store it. I can also save it to table 2 so I could do a comparison on it. And again, the correction factors are still in there, so I can just hit apply corrections again and it'll bring them back. So now if I do an actual comparison on the tables, since I saved that to V table 2, I can compare tables and see how much they've changed. And you can tell that cell increased quite a bit because there was quite a bit of error in that cell. Now, with that said, there's one problem with this. The problem with that is that this cell also contributes to any error that would be over here, and any error that would be down here, and any error up there. So by making a really large change to this one cell right here, I'm probably affecting its contributions as I move around in the log at different data points. Now, to get around that, we can select an area of the log and correct over that area. So if I just select, let's say, from this point to that point, so that I select, there's not much error here, there's not much error here, and I've got that area selected. Now we'll clear those previous corrections, and I'll say apply B corrections to all marked cells. And what this is going to do is it's going to go through here and make corrections at every cursor point and average those corrections together. So now if I go back to the VE table, let's restore that, clear that, look at the correction factors now, you can see that it's corrected a range of cells, and you'll also notice that that value is no longer nearly as high as it was. It's because as I've marked different cells, it's averaged these together so that it understands that that one cell is also affecting other areas, so you get a more accurate correction over that range than that spike. So now if I apply those corrections, you can see that it's a much smoother change. Now it makes more sense as far as how it blends into surrounding cells. So you have the ability to make a one spot change where the cursor is, but you're going to get a lot more accurate results if you change over an entire area. So for one more view of this here, let's clear out what we've done so far. We'll go back and we'll clear an entire area here. Let's say I want to do the entire pool. I'm going to start about where the cursor is right now because I don't want this area because the AFR was still settling down. There's probably a little bit of delay in there, so we pick a point where things have settled down to start with, and then I'll go to the end of the log or the end of the pool just before throttle lifted and while things are still stable, and then we want to correct this entire area. So I'll clear any previous ones, apply corrections to all marked cells, and now if I look at my correction factors, you can see I've corrected the entire pool for the most part. And again, all these are averaged as it moves through to get a nice smooth interpolation. So come back to the VE table, apply corrections, there's my corrections, and the final phase would be to copy that to the clipboard, go back to ECMLink and paste the table back in, and there's my corrected VE table. In the next videos, we're going to get a little more into how to correct different areas of the log and do some other things with some of the other tabs in the program.